So, Tom, this last week, we did a fundraiser.
We did.
And we wound up raising with 3 other podcasts, Opening Arguments, Knowledge Fight, and Scathing Atheist, over $160,000.
A huge outpouring.
$160,000 for abortion access, 3 different charities we chose. That whole stream is available on YouTube, and the place that we wound up donating was awayfund.org. That's the Opening Arguments Fund. It's going to take that money, split it up 3 different ways, and send those checks directly out to those organizations. But huge outpouring from our community as usual.
Man, I first couple of things occur to me. One is I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised because this community has stepped up every time that the call has been made. But even though I'm not surprised, I don't want to take it for granted because I'm also intensely impressed. And honestly, like I don't say this, like I'm actually pretty fucking humbled by it. I really am.
For real.
Because there's no way you and I could do this.
Yeah.
Right? This $160,000 will make a real, genuine, material difference in the lives of people who have now become second-class citizens. And the only way that that happens is because we're all able to connect together.
Yeah.
We're all able to bind together and unite as a community. When we started this, what we had in common was something we didn't believe in. We talked about this with our guest.
Yeah.
And that's nothing, right? That doesn't hold. There's no bond to that. But what I am gratified by time and again is, and I know this might sound kind of cheesy, but I don't care. Like I am genuinely moved by the depths of the bonds that have been created as a result of this little podcast world. This little, I don't know what you call it. But it's like, it's got Knowledge Fight in it now, and it's got us, and it's got the Scathing guys, and it's got the OA guys, and we're not part of anything official. We're not joined at the hip or tethered financially to one another, but there's this thing that we kind of share. And we've been able to sort of connect together and pull some different audiences from this show and from that show. And $160,000 is an impressive showing. It does more than just help the people who get financially involved. That also will get attention, and it will help motivate other people to give. And it will help really establish that this is a community that is powerful, and this is a community that believes in something more than just not believing in things. That's what we're accused of all the time. We're accused of not believing in things. And there's so much more to us than that. I'm so grateful to be a part of that community and that group of people, whatever we call it. I don't know what it would even be called.
Yeah.
But I am deeply grateful to be a part of it.
I am so impressed, like you said, so impressed with the people who step up and help motivate their communities around them, right? Like you and I are just dudes.
Right.
But we just happen to have a little bit louder voice. And the people who listen to us are also caring people.
Right.
And the same thing is true for many in these communities. And so grabbing together all those caring people is sort of really an amazing moment, right? It's what people talk about, like what religion is, the sort of gathering of people and the idea, like there's a very, there's a very moving experience to be had here just as much as there would be in any spiritual place. You know what I mean? Like these gathering of people to do good work is important. And I want to give a shout out to the Scathing Atheist guys who they were on, like, this is the night before they go to their company retreat. Right. This is the night before they all, and the same thing with Thomas and Andrew, because they were OA. They were going there too. Yep. So it's like, this is the night before they all decide to get on a plane and travel somewhere. They took time out of their schedule to do that. The Knowledge Fight guys, they actually, before they came on with us, were doing another fundraiser.
Yeah.
And before that, they had actually raised, I thought I read, $10,000 to $15,000 for abortion before that.
Yeah.
So they had already come in raising extra money before then, trying to spend their time as much as they could to get as much of the word out as they could to sort of further this message to help motivate people to donate. And they're just an amazing group of people, just genuinely amazing.
It truly is. And it's so needed. And here's a story from The Guardian about why this kind of thing is needed. And just to give you guys an idea, the funds that we donated to are funds that help provide not just abortion services themselves, but also logistical access to abortion for those who are living in nightmarish fucking dystopian hellscapes that are essentially Margaret Atwood fucking wet fantasies, right? So that nightmare, these organizations help move women out of Gilead and into the real America where they actually count and have rights.
Yeah.
A story from The Guardian that I can't believe I'm reading in 2022. I can't. 10-year-old rape victim forced to travel from Ohio to Indiana for abortion. I think the most shocking thing about that story is that anybody went to Indiana.
God damn it.
When Indiana is your bastion of progressivism in a region, what have you done,
what
America?
What I love about this story, though, too, is that they dig beyond the depths of Indiana and Ohio to reach out to one of the Dakotas to get the governor of one of the Dakotas. I think it's South Dakota. I'm not sure. I don't remember which Dakota it is. I'll be perfectly honest. But the person who they're talking to is this governor who essentially just banned all abortion.
Right.
And they said, well, what would happen, in your state?
Right.
And her response was, nobody's talking about the rapist. And I'm just like, man, the rapist gets to go to jail. Like nobody's talking about the rapist, because the real tragedy here is that the state has abandoned a victim. That's the tragedy. We're not talking about the rapist, because the rapist is going to go to jail, or the rapist is going to be, they're going to have some problem.
Right. Yeah. Like, we're not talking about, like, that's sort of the Texas suggestion that we'll just get rid of rape. Well, why the fuck, if you could do that, why didn't you do that?
Why didn't you do it already?
Really? Yeah. Like, oh, you had a magic no rape wand, and what, you were sitting on it because you could always get an abortion? Like, really? That's why we're not talking about the rapist, because there are already laws outlawing fucking rape.
It's a stupid comment. It's a stupid comment. And the other thing too that is so frustrating with all this is the way this woman frames her argument is as if people are just like using abortion as contraception with no other plan in place. They're just out there having sex, and then they're just like, I gotta go back for an abortion. That is such not what really happens in the world. It is such a fucking fabrication of the right to make it look like every single person who gets an abortion they're just not responsible for their own body. And they go out and flaunt this system to try to show that they're not responsible for their own body. When in fact, especially when you're talking about the pregnancies that go to like the third term, and then there needs to be an abortion because of medical reasons, these people were ready to have a baby.
Man, I just watched, and I recommend anybody, I just watched this week the documentary After Tiller. So Tiller is the name of an abortion provider who performed abortions in the third trimester, and he was assassinated. So After Tiller is an abortion documentary. It was made in 2015. The third trimester abortion providers in America, there are 4. There are 4 people, 4 human beings providing that service. That's it. Just 4 human beings providing that service. Less than 1% of abortions are in the third trimester, and they are almost exclusively people who desperately wanted these children, and they have terrible fetal abnormalities. They were never going to be viable, or the women are in terrible danger if they were to continue that pregnancy, or there was some exigent circumstance which prevented women from gaining access to care in a more timely fashion. Regardless, they are a statistical anomaly. There's 4 providers. The anti-choice movement or right or whatever you want to call it, they seize on this as if it's some kind of a norm, when it's like 91.1% of all abortions occur before 10 weeks.
99 or 91?
91% occur before 10 weeks.
10 weeks.
Before 10 weeks.
That is like what I said. It's a bloody nose.
Right.
It's not even if you were to show someone what was gone at 10 weeks.
Right.
They would be like, what is that? Is that like an apple seed?
And when you push that number out to like 20 weeks, it's like 99%.
99, yeah, sure.
So we're not talking about
first trimester abortions. That's what Roe codified, right? Was free for the country, first trimester abortions. And then everybody kept on trying to put in little things like, oh, you gotta name it, and you gotta stick a thing up your hoo-ha, and you gotta look at it in the face and say, I'm gonna kill you, or whatever. Like all these weird laws that they try to put in place. But Roe essentially said 20 weeks is fine.
Yeah, and I looked this up the other day because I was curious about this and I got to thinking about this. And so it is not until sometime in the 7th month of pregnancy that there is, so we talk about like measuring the right, I don't want to say we, the right talks about measuring things like the heartbeat in order to determine life, right? And we had Dr. Jessica on twice, and the heartbeat, first of all, it's not a heart.
Yeah.
Second of all, it's not a heartbeat, but also that's not actually a good measure of when life begins. And we know that because it's not the measure of how life ends. So in other words, if I get in a car crash or my dad has a fucking stroke or something and his heart keeps beating, what we actually measure to determine life is whether or not there's brainwave activity.
Yeah.
That's how we determine whether or not a fully bodied person who is no longer physically tethered to another human being for life support, that's what we measure. And we measure that if somebody is 70 years old, and we measure that same thing if somebody is 6 months old, right? We don't measure a different thing if there's any question about whether somebody's alive. It's not until the 7th month that there's any measurable brainwave activity. Yeah. Prior to month 7, there is no, this is according to the NIH. So just in case anyone's wondering where my source is, from the NIH. So there's no measurable brainwave activity. So the thing that we use to measure whether or not a fully bodied person is alive or dead, and we measure that to decide, can we harvest organs from this thing?
Yeah.
Right?
It's very Shivo.
Right.
Yeah.
So like if I get in a fucking car wreck and my brain dies, my heart keeps beating, they can stop my beating heart, right, in order to take my kidneys and give them to someone that needs them because I'm fucking dead. And dead is the opposite fucking thing of alive. We're liars about this. Like the right is lying about this. They are lying. They're moving the goalpost with the heartbeat when we don't use that goalpost for any fully bodied, non-tethered human organism.
Sure.
And it's fucking nonsense. This story from The Guardian, a 10-year-old kid, and in the state of Ohio is like, no. And the Dakotas are like, no.
And they're going to have a special session in Indiana soon to abolish it. And they will.
They will.
They will 100%.
Absolutely.
In a special session soon that's like, it's going to be gone. So that's a 2-state area. Think about where you're at. Let's say you're in like the Toledo area or maybe a little bit farther. Let's say you're closer to Cleveland. What do you have? Hours and hours and hours and hours to drive to get somewhere so that because Michigan now is going to go dark.
Right.
Right.
If you're in Cincinnati, you're 5 hours from civilization.
Yeah. Cincinnati, you're fucked. Because Kentucky, Tennessee.
Right.
What's around you?
Right. Seriously, you're 5 hours to Illinois.
What's around you? And that's the problem. Is like, and this is a long place. You're traveling a long way.
Yeah. And the costs of that travel, it's also, I looked up, the majority of people who choose to have an abortion already have kids. They already have kids. They understand what's going on. Like the right likes to paint this, like to your point, they like to paint this as a matter of responsibility. It's a bullshit way to phrase something, right? This has nothing to do with responsibility. This has everything to do with denying women bodily autonomy, because to deny a woman bodily autonomy is to relegate women to second-class citizenry. And that's not unintentional. There was a Times article that came out today that was talking about how women are not able to return to the workforce in the same numbers as men have been able to return to the workforce post-pandemic because the industries that have not come back online are the childcare and elder care industries. Right. Industries which are both staffed by primarily women and also primarily services that women need. This, in conjunction with the destruction of women's bodily autonomy rights means that women will be forced more and more into roles of financial servitude.
Even further out of the workforce.
Yep.
And the worst part about all this is that women were making true strides, becoming the more educated group of people.
Yeah.
Be getting more and more better paying jobs.
Voting more often.
Yeah. There was so much more that had happened in recent years. There was progress.
The huge progress.
And that tells you, I think, why these things are being decided the way they are.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Really devastating story about this poor little girl.
This little kid, man. 10 is so little.
10 is so young. 10 is so young. And to be in that situation and to look at any of these anti-choicers in the country and to have them sit down with her and say, no, you're forced to do this. You have to, because this woman, this governor is like, every life is beautiful. And at one point, I want to read part of what she says.
Oh my God, it's so monstrous. Yeah.
She says, asked if the girl should have to leave have the baby. Noam responded that every single life is precious. This tragedy is horrific. But in South Dakota, it was a South Dakota lady, the law today is that abortions are illegal except to save the life of the mother. And I would argue to you, Tom, that if this little girl had an abortion, it would save her life.
Yeah, because
it would save her life. It would save her whole life.
It would save everything that's meaningful about being alive.
And I would say the same thing about every single mother out there that has an abortion, that it saved their life.
Absolutely.
That while it might not have been a life-threatening injury, it saved their life.
Yeah, your life is more than just whether or not you live or die. Your life is a series of ideas and dreams and stories about who you want to be.
Exactly.
And a narrative you want to tell about your fucking future. And an unplanned pregnancy and an unwanted pregnancy necessarily derails that and threatens and destroys that story that you're trying to tell yourself and work toward about your own life. And it is nobody's fucking business but that woman who is pregnant about what story she chooses to tell about her relationship to motherhood. Whether she chooses to engage that or chooses not to engage that. This follow-up bullshit that she said yes, because asked if allowing an abortion to be performed on a 10-year-old would be considered as protecting the life of the mother, Noam did not rule out that interpretation. But then she says this, and you guys need to hear this. Yes, that situation, the doctor, the family, the individual closest to that will make the decisions there for that family. No, they won't because they can't.
Stepped in. Because the state now is the wall in between all those things.
Right.
The church, the mother, the father, the
financial
situation, the family around it, the doctor, all that stuff gets bodied out of there.
Right.
By the state, who's now gets to make this decision unilaterally for everyone.
I read that line and I couldn't believe that line, because that line basically says it's nobody's business but the woman and her care providers and those closest to her, right?
And a bunch of senators.
And I'm just
and 9 justices.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, I fucking agree. So why are you in her fucking uterus, man?
Fucking A, man.
This is a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
What the fuck? That was such an egregious line. I couldn't believe that when I read it.